Good morning, class. We are embarking now on a new module, one that will pose problems for you that the last module did not pose, to the extent that Sophocles and Shakespeare are not too hard to compare to great writers, very much pillars, self-evidently pillars of whatever we might think of to call the Western tradition, comparable in their examination of the human heart and of the dangers that beset us in human society, the emotional dangers. Now, I want you to turn to two elements of Western culture, to clearly remarkable pieces of writing, but not obviously connected. And that's part of our endeavor, is if there is a Western tradition, what are its limits? How do we incorporate into it such very distant from each other, such very remote stars as Beowulf in the first instance? Let's begin with the first half of our module. Now, Beowulf is named for the hero of this ancient saga, ancient English saga, because it is written in a kind of Old English, which we cannot just sit down and read. Only experts and scholars can do that. It's really too difficult, and we need a translation. And we're going to read together a most wonderful translation, my favorite translation, by the great Irish poet Seamus Heaney. So if you look up Beowulf and Seamus Heaney PDF, you will bring up his wonderful translation. Beowulf takes place in ancient Scandinavia. It takes place in the kingdom of the Danes, but the kingdom of the Danes in early times, before, let's say, the year 1000, which is when Beowulf is presumed to have been composed in the 10th century, or earlier. There were certainly forerunners of this saga, and there are many other comparable sagas, although this is deemed to be the greatest of them. In that time, England, the eastern part of England certainly, belonged to Denmark, and for many years we paid Dane geld, which is referenced in Shakespeare's Hamlet, when he sends the king, Claudius, sends his pesky nephew to England to collect the Dane geld from England, since Hamlet the play is set in Denmark. And Shakespeare sets the story where he found it in the Middle Ages. So for many centuries, although Danes no longer ruled England, they received tribute from England. So for the early English readers of the saga, there's a continuity between Denmark and England politically. However, the hero of this saga is what we might call now Swedish, but he was a Geat, if that's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure anybody actually really knows all that well how G-E-A-T was sounded. But he comes over to Denmark to save the Danes, or a particular Danish court, from a terrible monster who is ravaging the land and laying everything to waste. This monster is called Grendel. Now, this story, as I hope will strike you when you start to read it, is the ancestor of many similar stories. On the one hand, we have heroes like Hercules, the Greek Heracles, who famous for his 12 tasks, where he, amongst other things, he destroys threats of various kinds to orderly society. The Nemean lion is I think, the first of those who is making life very difficult for the countryside around him, and the bull that Hercules crushes. These are not, of course, literal creatures, but they are encapsulations of the threat to orderly and happy human society, to which Grendel the monster is also similarly a threat. And what is that threat in reality? It doesn't consist of physical monsters. What it consists of is our own greed, our own envy and jealousy, and the rage of the excluded, made physical in a being that ravages the land. Without wishing to get too partisan about it, we can see in the current divisions in America the function of the rage of the excluded, that obviously is a force in our land here in America, and needs to be reconciled so that there may be brotherly love amongst all. And that is what is at risk in Beowulf, where a troubled and threatened society, previously happy, is attacked by an envious force that can eat men. As I say this, later leads us to epics like that of Hercules, but more recently, for instance, to the Seven Samurai, if you've seen the original wonderful Japanese film or the Hollywood version, which is also wonderful, in which happy villagers, or formerly happy villagers, have lost their happiness because of a marauding band, a large number of heavily armed, to call them piratical people who want to profit off the peaceful farming of the village, and take a tribute at their own Dane geld, and probably take women as well. So to get rid of these fearsome pests, the villagers hire 7 samurai, mercenary fighters, the best in the land, to rid them of the army of pests. And that's the story, the battle that ensues. So, similarly, in the ancient world that we read about in Beowulf, the court of the Danes is able to appeal to, it's not exactly the Swedes, the geography is not quite ordered as it is now. Now there's the East Götaland and various parts of Scandinavia that were independent in those days, and there was a court there that owed some war money. There are various debts incurred in war which have to be paid perhaps over a long period of time. So there was a debt there that could be repaid, and over comes their great champion, Beowulf, with his men, arriving like the 7 samurai to see if they can quell the monster and reinstall happiness. So, and peace, orderliness. So one of the more remarkable things, as you'll soon see about the saga, is that Grendel the monster is not, for us reading the saga, a distant figure in the mists, emerging to attack the Danes in their mead hall. Any of you who have drunk good mead, that's an alcoholic drink made from honey, will know that it's well worth having a hall building a hall in which you will drink a great deal of mead. Mead is a wonderful drink, and it's even possible that the significance of honey and bees extends to the name of our hero and the name of the saga, Beowulf, among the many etymologies that have been constructed for this name. Still the most popular is Beowulf, the wolf of bees, i.e. a bear. Bears plunder hives. Wolves don't. But this plundering of the hives is a significant part of the life of bears and a significant part of what attracts bears. So the bear man, Beowulf, arrives, and almost before we meet him, after a brief introduction giving us some background to the Geats. Nobody, I think, quite knows how that's pronounced, Geat, but he's a Geat, Beowulf. And there's some background, and then we swiftly enter the scene of horror. But we enter it, remarkably, with Grendel, not with Beowulf. And it's not the least extraordinary part of this great poem that they don't seem to have considered the proper Hollywood approach to a saga of this kind, in which you walk with the hero and you think with the hero until you meet the adversary. No, you start with the adversary, even though the adversary is a monster descended from Cain, from the man who slew his brother and became an outcast, but was eventually permitted by God, as the saga declares, a saga written by a Christian. We can assume, we don't know who the author was, and which tells of how God was prepared eventually to forgive Cain's descendants and give them a place, but an outcast place. And poor Grendel, who has more than his fair share of spirit in him, comes to watch the mead hall and watch the happiness of other people and hates them for it. And this is the cause of his war on man, exclusion. So we know all about this now in contemporary America, where inclusion and exclusion are such huge forces, politically speaking. So we enter the story, amazingly enough, with Grendel. We march on the mead hall with Grendel. I think this is so extraordinary to me and so wonderful that without declaring a partisanship, the author, in a sense, allies us to the excluded, to the outcast, to the monster, before allying us to the great hero. So I was going to read a little from the saga, but I will do that in another little video, simply for the pleasure of sharing with you what it says. So Beowulf and Grendel the monster, and a saga not unlike a Western in its appeal, and that is very much a part of the Western tradition. I think, I hope very much that you'll enjoy it. I think it's an extraordinary journey and a very powerful one, and one that we will want to consider as to how it integrates in the Western culture. So stay warm, it's getting quite cold out here, and stay safe above all, and keep a weather eye out for the Grendels. A wonderful novel called Grendel was written by a great American novelist, John Gardner, precisely taking up the idea of Grendel as protagonist. Do read that if you enjoy the Beowulf, interested in the saga. Gardner died prematurely in his 40s in a motorbike crash, something that, as a former motorbike rider myself for 50 years, I was always mindful of. This great writer who ended his life much too early. But he left us a number of wonderful novels, in particular Grendel, a novel. And you will see when you start to read Beowulf how that insinuates itself into the reader's mind. Enjoy, my dears, and I will be back with you, perhaps with a little reading.